written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts. When the parents brought in the child, Jesus, to do for him what the custom of the law required, Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." The child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." There was also a prophet, Anna, the daughter of Penuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then was a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. Now what we see in this passage is some prophecy about Jesus when he's brought into the temple, when they're going about fulfilling the requirements of the law. Of course, being Jewish people, they're bound to that, and so they're doing that, they're fulfilling that. But these prophecies are coming, and even what is being prophesied by Simeon is not all so good. I mean, it's wonderful because he's seeing the salvation of Israel, and he's saying, "You can let me die now, God. You've let me see what you promised I could see." And so he's waited all this time in his life to see the Messiah. And he says, "I have seen the salvation of Israel. You can take your servant home now." And so he sees this fulfillment in him. But he even says concerning Mary that a sword will pierce your own soul too. And so there's going to be some things happen that aren't going to be easy. This child is born, but it's not done. That's not the end of it. Go back to Matthew, if you will. In Matthew's account, in Matthew chapter 2, after we get to the end of the part where he talks about the Magi, or the wise men coming to the house that's there in Bethlehem, in verse 13, it follows this up. And of course, you know, Herod has questioned the Magi, and he's wanting them to come tell him where they've been to see this child, this born king of the Jews. And of course, he's wanting to do harm, and God lets them know that he's wanting to do harm. They need to leave by another way, so they don't go back and tell Herod. So there's some things happen. Beginning in verse 13, when they had gone, Matthew 2, verse 13, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more." Let me stop there for just a second. I want to read just a little bit more there. Let's stop there for just a second. God is warning Joseph through an angel in a dream to take the baby to Egypt because Herod is going to seek to kill him. And so they get up in the night and they head out for Egypt. I mean, can you imagine How many of you ever moved anywhere? Can you imagine you have a dream in the night? First of all, I can't imagine Mary's reaction when Joseph wakes her up and says, I've had a dream. We've got to move to Egypt. Come on, let's go. We've got to go now. Of course, by this time, probably nothing is surprising Mary. You know, so after the last 9 months and however long it's been since then, we know from the time frame here, possibly 2 years from what Herod had figured out from the Magi. But here's a young baby, maybe as old as 2 years old by this time. Still a baby, but a toddler. And Joseph is saying, we've got to go. And so they pack up and go. They couldn't have packed very much. They couldn't have taken very much. They probably didn't have very much. But they leave for Egypt. And even the fulfillment of what God has prophesied. And you see all these things. It's amazing how it all fits together. How the prophets couldn't have seen how this could have all fit together. How the coming king, the Messiah, could come from Bethlehem, could come from Egypt. I mean, how could all these things work out this way? Well, this is how it is to be. And so he sends him into Egypt to hide. Herod doesn't like this. And they stay there until Herod dies. Herod doesn't like this. So he kind of backs up in the story a little bit and takes it from Herod's standpoint. Herod doesn't like it. And so he's going to make sure. So he decides, okay, the time frame that these wise men told me, every boy child 2 years old and younger in the vicinity around Bethlehem is going to be killed. Whose fault is that? Make you stop and think for a minute. Jesus comes to the earth because he is born. Herod is now going to kill all these baby boys. Now think about that for a minute. It's a solemn thought, isn't it? Jesus coming into the world. If Jesus hadn't been born, would these boys have died? Would these baby boys have been slain? If Herod hadn't known, if God could have kept Herod from knowing, but all of that, those are ifs. That's not the way it happened. Jesus was born, and all of these baby boys died, and so our mind kind of does this. Wait a second. That's not the message of Jesus. And so we maybe have a little bit of a struggle with that. But that doesn't mean it's Jesus' fault. Jesus came, and even as we've been looking, I mean, the statements that the angels made and the statements that the shepherds repeated, that he was going to bring peace, that this would be news of joy, great joy for all the people. But yet we see a result, something that's happening here, but it's the very reason Jesus did come. Because it was a sinful nature that killed these babies. It was a sinful desire that slain these baby boys. I mean, the same age as Jesus or younger.